back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Ford.
Hey, how are you?
And Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And we were sitting here in my office. We had this conversation going, and we thought this might be an interesting topic just to sort of flesh out for a few minutes. But I was at a conference about a week or 10 days ago, something like that. And one of these off-the-cuff topics came up. We started talking about the idea that there were some folks there at the conference that were saying they had started this idea where they were going to remove their logos, remove their names, remove their phone numbers from their vehicles. And it sort of struck me as odd. And the more we talked about it, the more I realized it was a little bit of a societal, maybe even cultural shift in how they were thinking. And they were kind of concerned about sort of just keeping their heads low, sort of avoiding the public eye. They didn't want to draw positive or negative attention to whatever it is that they were doing, whether it's just heavy highway trucks going down the road, whether it's a transportation company, whatever it might be. They said, you know what, we're tired of people calling us to say, hey, your truck was driving too fast or something of that nature. So we're just taking all that information off our trucks. And it sort of struck me because we've had this conversation here before, but it took us a long time, but we kind of went the opposite direction. For a long time, we sort of said, we're not necessarily looking for attention. We just want to do what we do and do it well. And I think there were some components there. Ford, you could maybe talk about this, but there were some components there where for a while, you sort of struggled with the idea of having your name on everything, right? That started out as Berg Construction, Ford Berg, the identity of Berg Construction, your last name on everything we do. You didn't necessarily want your last name on billboards driving down the side of the road.
I'm still uncomfortable, but I'm getting there. 20 years later.
We had to work through it, right? I mean,
just wore me down. Just kept talking about it.
Maybe that's it. Maybe we didn't actually work through it. We just tired you out. But the opposite for us was sort of the idea that, we've had this conversation a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago. We're proud of the work we do. We want to be known for the good things that we do. We want our people to be able to sort of say, I did that, Berg Construction empowered me to do these things. And it's worth having my name on. It's worth having our company's name on. And I guess there are times where it means you're a target. It means that you didn't keep your head down. It means you had to stand out. But I just thought it was interesting in that for the same reasons we don't mind having our name on stuff, people were looking for the opportunity to remove their name from the public eye.
I mean, it's tough because I understand why they're doing it. But at some point, Dan and I, and we've all had this conversation about, at some point, the good guys got to stand up and win, right? We can't be worried about those guys that are out there trying to take advantage of the insurance or take advantage of, whatever kind of fraudulent claim or whatever it is. And it's you just got to take your stand in the sand. And it's it took us a long time to get here, but we're here. We're going to stay here and we're going to stay in our lane. And we're going to, if we're going to have our shirts, our hats, hard hats, our trucks, our equipment, it's because that's us. And it's for us, for the good, for the bad, for the indifferent. It's going to stay what it is. We can't just keep running and changing every time the winds, swing a different direction.
Yeah, and what's ironic is we didn't start out, as you said and Ford said it, we didn't start out putting our name out purposely because Ford is uncomfortable with it being out there. It's not him as a person, his personality. We had discussions for years that if there's one thing he could have changed, he probably would have never named the company Berg, because it's him. It's literally his name driving around. And so it did take a while, as we said, growing up in Jersey, you logo everything. So I'd always been of the mindset we should put logos on everything. And it was a back and forth between Ford and I of whether we do it or not. And now we're at this odd spot where we're talking about it from a completely different angle. Ford's almost taking a stand with us to say we want to be proud of what we do, so our name needs to be on it, regardless of the fact that he's still not comfortable that his name is the one on it. So he's put in this position, I think, where you have to argue something that you actually don't is not natural to you. You know, in other words, I would say if I said, Ford, do you think that the company name should be visible and out there so we can say we do these good things, this is what we do, and our people own it and they're proud of it? He would say yes. I would say, okay, well, do you want it to say Ford Berg on my shirt? And he would say no.
Well, I think that's part of maybe what has made it better is that it is a team now. It is 70 people. It's become from a last name to just a company name. It's still sign my name the same way, but it's not. I think it was more of a struggle when it was smaller because it felt more individualistic, but now it's become an identity for a larger team and what we do, and so it's become easier to deal with because of that.
Yeah, I think that probably helps. It just sort of felt to me like one of those conversations that was indicative of like short-term reaction to or permanent reaction to short-term issues, right? People are afraid of being recognized for the wrong things, and I think what they're doing is they're taking away the opportunity to be recognized for the right things. The opportunity is always going to exist for someone to think you're not doing something right, or you're not doing it their way, or not doing it in a fashion that they would like to see it done. And I think the great thing about the United States for a long time has been that it's okay to disagree, and it's okay to not have the same opinions as the people standing next to you. I think where we're at now, and this, is way off topic, but we don't always know how to have those disagreements anymore, which is probably what's driving some of this. People would rather just avoid the conversation altogether, right?
Well, and actually, I think a perfect story to define this was Matt, road mechanic, had his truck out. And this was a while back, and my wife got a call, and they said, "You guys hit a horse on the road."
Yeah, I remember this.
Right, and it was person's perception. They drove past, and here Matt was doing a great thing. He stopped to help someone because I guess their horse had collapsed, and he was trying to help the horse back up. So the real story was he was being a hero to help somebody.
He came upon a horse who had been injured,
right,
and had stopped to help the farmer to try and assist the horse getting back up. Yep, yeah.
But the person driving by literally thought that
they saw our truck, our logo, and a horse laying on the side of the road. Yeah. No, I remember that story well. Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect example of perception versus reality, and why you can't give in and be like, well, if we didn't have our name there, they wouldn't have called us. He was doing a good thing. He wasn't doing a bad thing, and it's just somebody took a snapshot and made a snap decision on something that was incorrect.
Yeah, they made a quick assessment of the situation and said, you guys did something wrong. You need to know about it. Yeah.
We'll see if I can hold my two thoughts together. But the one thing that Brian really hit on there is this is so it is hard to have this discussion and not have it be about the climate that we're in right now. In other words, everybody will talk about the silent majority, and that's not who gets the press. That's not what happens. It's not who drives things. It's not who they talk about. And I think it's relevant in this scenario, whether that be that example or other examples, that you got to be willing to just stand up, and be accountable for what it is that you do and you are and how you act, and then own that responsibility, and then have reasonable expectations of how society is going to act and how people are going to react to you, in a funny, completely different avenue of this occurring. So we had, we took the guys down to Georgia. A few guys went to Atlanta, and we got shirts, and Brian had them embroidered. And so it was a little bit different than one of our normal shirts, sort of identified it as something different. And we gave it to the guys who went there. And I gave one to Andrew, and Geezy said, "Oh, this is great. My girlfriend's going to love this. Because when we go to dinner, I always put on my orange Berg shirt." And she said, "It looks like a traffic cone." So, I mean, there's one of our guys who's going out to dinner now. Hopefully it's not like a, fancy engagement type dinner. It's just he's going out to get dinner, but he wears one of our shirts. He's proud of what he does. You know what I mean? He's willing to talk about it if somebody wants to talk about it. And if as a company, as a society, we can't talk and just have a conversation, we really start to lose the ability to do much of anything, because you just keep, you keep limiting yourself to exposure and silo and everything else. And so I think it's well worth the risk of putting our name out there. But for us internally, between Brian, Ford, and I don't really think it's about limiting our exposure in terms of people saying something or somebody seeing the horse down and thinking we hit the horse and then we got to deal with the PR of that. It's that we genuinely believe that what we're doing is good and we're doing it for the right reasons and we're doing a good job. So in what world would I not go out and spread the word that we're doing this good thing and we're proud of what we do and we're happy to do it? It doesn't even make sense that I wouldn't publicize it. Like, it gets away from whether New Jersey is loud and boisterous and wants you to know, and Lancaster County wants to be quiet about it. And it goes from being prideful, which is something we talked about before, to just being proud of what you do. And why wouldn't you tell people?
Right. Yeah. It sort of reminds me, something you said there sort of reminds me of a post that Herb Sargent had on LinkedIn recently. At least I saw it recently. It could have been weeks ago. You know how that is. Like, you see something today, but it was
Herb could have posted it in like
3
1957.
months. Yeah. I don't know. Was LinkedIn around in 1957?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Anyways, he was talking about generational gap. So a little bit different topic, but one of the things that he said was about standing in the middle, right? It's okay to stand in the middle. And I think that, and to some extent, that's what we're talking about here. You're going to have to take the bad with the good, but the good, in our opinion, outweighs the bad. And, I think that along those lines, and maybe even to that extent, regarding that generational gap conversation Herb was referring to, I think it's important. I think it's more important now than it ever has been for current and future generations to be able to point to that thing, right? I think that there is a mindset that was appropriate and had its place and had its time where, and I think this refers to some of like how we were raised, the three of us, and Ford, I know specifically you, where you just went out and you did your thing and you did it well and you didn't need recognition for it, right? You went and you worked hard and you were satisfied because you knew you did a good job. You didn't have to be told you did a good job. No one had to say, hey, Ford, I'm going to put your name on this thing because you did a nice job. And
trophies for everybody.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And we like to kind of like make jabs at younger generations and say, oh, everyone's a winner and everyone's got to have a trophy and they've all got to be acknowledged. But I think the reality is, like, they just have recognized how their options are more available, and they don't have to do this thing to make money, but they're doing it because it's fulfilling and because they can point to it and say, I did that. So there's like a difference in that communication. And I think that part of it is this being able to say, I am proud to have done these things, to work for this company that's doing these things, et cetera. Doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. We make mistakes probably more frequently than we'd like to admit. But I do think that there's something in that generational gap that, was not initially where I was started. But I think that being willing to put your name on stuff and to stand up and at times stand in the middle and not on the edges is also meaningful in that conversation.
Well, and I think that they're, topic for another day, but that's part of it too, is like we're saying, stand in the middle or whatever, but it's also about accountability to that piece, is that if something does get messed up, you stand up, you own it, you learn from it. They say true success is just going from failure to failure and continuing on. Maybe not. You can also be bankrupt at that level, but at the same time, it's continuing to learn, get better, improve your personal skills, your company skills, all of those at the same time, because that's the only way you're going to get through. And so that's part of the standing up is, owning successes and also owning things that were challenging and didn't go the way that you had expected them to go.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think the accountability piece is a huge part of the conversation, right? You gotta, not only do you have to acknowledge the things that you've done well, but you have to acknowledge the things that you've failed at or haven't done to the expectation potentially.
Yeah, well, the funny thing here is you get this view, I think, in what I'll say, like modern society.
Social media.
Right. Social media is driving it, media is driving it. And it's not what we wanted to start to talk about, but it really is central to it is you have two positions, right? Like, make it anything. Everything is that way. You know what I mean? It's an on-off switch. That's how the world runs now. It's you're this position or this position. But the most important position, and it is a position, is that center position, because it lets you like look at it, and it is probably the most reasonable position. You know what I mean? It's probably where you want to be. And I don't think that that's opposed to the same idea of winning, because there's nothing that I, as a competitive person, dislike more than everybody gets a trophy. Like, you know, I think we've talked about it. Like when my daughters play soccer, I don't buy sweatshirts or shirts or paraphernalia from a tournament if they don't win. Like, and it's not because I demand winning. It's because if there's going to be a reward should be for, it wasn't for showing up. You know what I mean? Like, you showed up at the tournament because I paid for it. Like, you just showed up because I paid for it and I drove you there. But if you perform in a way that is exceptional, then you deserve some reward. And that doesn't lessen the value that you performed if you don't win. It just means not everybody needs an award. But likewise, you got to be willing to perform, willing to put yourself out there and say, I'm going to go do this hard work and I'm going to do the best I can. And not every job we do wins, right? Like, I mean, by any measure that you want to have it, jobs that we do that we did the best we could, and maybe the client's not thrilled. We did the best we could, and it came in over budget because of things that were out of our control. We did the best we could, and it wasn't as profitable as we had hoped it would be. But at the end of the day, you got to end that job being able to stand up and be proud and say, we did the best we could with that specific set of circumstances, and then move on. And that's a success. It doesn't mean you get an award for it.
Right.
It just means you succeeded because you continued. It goes back to, I can never remember where it was from, Ford. I think it was the Simon Sinek or something, but about Apple and Microsoft, that Microsoft is always trying to beat Apple. Apple's just trying to be better than they were yesterday. You know, and that mentality, I think, is, we don't talk about it much, but it's so central to how we operate. That if you are just better tomorrow than you were today, then just keep doing that, putting that together. And that quietly becomes some of the things we've talked about. Put your head down and just work, get it done. You know what I mean? Till the job gets done, all these things. It's because that's who it's how we want to operate. But within a framework of a modern society where we're trying to do other things and be respectful. But at the end of the day, you wear Berg shirts, I wear Berg shirts, you know what I mean? And I wear it without thinking, you know what I mean? And because I'm proud of what we do. You know, I'm proud to go out there and say, this is what we do. I don't ever feel like I'm in an environment where I wouldn't want to say that. I don't want to say where I work or any other things. And then one other thing so Ford, you know, the company supports a lot of different things. So Ford and Colt and I were out with Tom, and very unusual I would play with that group, but we were playing golf for something we supported. And I don't know how it happened that we had a conversation, but Colt was talking about that when Ford and Colt hit a good shot, they don't act like they did anything, you know? And it's one of those things, they don't want to celebrate, but they do want to be successful, you know? So that's important. Like, you don't have to be prideful and let it get the best of you, but it doesn't mean you don't take pride in what you're doing and do the best you possibly can.
There you go. You asked. I think what actually happened is you asked him to show you what a celebration looked like, and he was unable to perform.
That was after he said he doesn't celebrate. I said, okay, well, let's see a celebration then, and he wouldn't do it. And I said, okay, you're not even hitting a golf ball right now. Just if Colt Berg was to celebrate, what would it look like? He could come up with nothing. Though I did find this out, and it may be shocking to you. Luke celebrates.
That is
even
shocking.
as a kid, Luke used to. Tom's description was borderline mocking.
It might have been a 15-yard penalty in the NFL nowadays, what he used to do.
Yeah, Tom's description of Luke Berg pitching and celebrating post-strikeout is borderline mocking. I would expect it in New Jersey. I would not have expected it from Luke.
He literally would give, it looked like the Tiger Woods arm strike when every time he struck somebody out. And he literally had to be toned down because it was a little too much.
Wow. I would not expect that from Luke.
I would expect Luke to be like them and walk away and just almost you be aggravated because they're not even excited.
Because he's not excited to win. Yeah.
But no, that's the Ford style. Ford takes that to next level. Because we have also had the discussion. Ford doesn't like when everybody says nice shot because, in any sport you play, if you're playing a basketball game, there might be 3 nice shots in a game. If you say nice shot 60 times, you really water down nice shot. It's too many trophies.
Sure.
You lose the value of the word.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, that's fair.
play basketball on Monday nights, and it's like, oh, great shot, or like, nice move. I've been playing here for 10 years. I'm going to play here next week too. It's not that interesting.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
You made the basket. Okay, well, we got to make 10 of them a game in order to win. So let's keep moving.
You don't like the niceties. You don't like people just being polite.
What's
Silence
funny
is good.
Well, and what's funny is, Brian, I think that you and I should take something from this because Ford tells us nice shot sometimes when we hit a
Right,
ball, which
yeah.
is only because our regular shots are so bad.
They're so terrible.
They're so terrible that when we hit a ball that's somewhat reasonable, he's like, that's a nice shot. What he really means is that was an actual golf shot.
Right, like congratulations, you put it in play.
Yeah, that's right. So,
That's fair. Okay, I understand now.
the next time we play now, you're going to, you probably want to talk to Allie afterwards about your feelings.
I feel like I'm gonna just need headphones or something.
Well, and that's what happened this morning, right? We had a conversation and Brian walked in and he said, so how'd you play? I said, terrible. And I was like, partly because of who I played with. I was like, because if you play with Tom, Colt, and Ford, at least two of them are going to hit a good shot on every hole, which makes your like okay shot just completely worthless. Then you try harder and that ends badly. So it was still fun to play though.
It's 4 hours outside in the nice weather right now in the fall, but no, it's good to support the charity, and that's one thing that charities do. They understand that it's people can write checks, but people like to get together and play golf is a great way for them to raise funds and also for us to be able to support them. So it's nice. I think we have a couple of them lined up that they all seem to do them in groups. It's either like spring or fall. They don't do it like it's not spread out over the year. It's like in clumps.
It's tough. Like, how many people want to play golf in the 95-degree weather?
It's funny about this one, Ford and I. We don't say what charity it was or what we were supporting. I think that might be one of the most honest scoring scrambles I've ever seen because you could have as many as 12 mulligans. The winning team had a very good golfer on it and was minus 12. And I mean, I've played in tournaments where people lost 4 dozen balls and ended up like minus 27. You know what I mean? They shot like an 18. You know what I mean? Every hole was a hole in one. It was like this.
It doesn't make any sense.
This doesn't make any sense.
And as normal, we're off the tracks somewhere
off the rails at this point. So,
but at the end of the day, you know what I mean, Brian? We take pride in what we do. We're not pulling stuff off the trucks. We've taken a long time to get to the point where we were both comfortable and able to put a brand forth that we can be proud of what we do. We have a team that is proud of what they do, and we're going to continue to do that. And regardless of what society thinks about it and culture wanting to keep your head down and stay out of the way and stay out of harm's way, we're just going to keep moving forward and doing what we do. We're
happy to take ownership of the good and the bad, right? Fix them as we go when we make mistakes, but take ownership of everything we do. So, yeah. I think it's a good place to wrap it up. Thanks for joining us today. We hope to have you again soon on another podcast.